Alleluia. Om Mani Padme Om. Allah Satnam.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. And we're speaking with Fr Bruce Duncan. He's a Redemptorist Priest and a lecturer at the Yarra Theological Union. And we spoke last week with Fr Bruce, and it's about the papal encyclical. There's an economic component to the encyclical, and this quotation is part of it, is that there's a technocratic domination leads to the destruction of nature and the exploitation of people, and the quote is, by itself, the market cannot guarantee integral human development and social inclusion. Seems like a pretty reasonable sort of a statement to me, but that raises some ire among some people, doesn't it? Because
yes, and connect that with the other things he's been saying, his critique of international capitalism as it's been working, what he calls unregulated capitalism, or the more technical phrase he uses is neoliberalism, which is a particularly more recent development in the type of capitalism that we see in the United States. It's very dominant in the United States particularly. What he's saying is that it's increasing inequality at an exponential rate, unprecedented in any generation. We have never seen wealth so concentrated in the hands of so few people.
yes,
So that I think the figures that some of the economists were giving out recently was there are 85 individual people who have as much wealth as 3.5 billion people. They have as much wealth as half the planet, half the people on the planet. And some other economists interject, said, no, it's not 85, it's 60 people have that. So the degree of concentration of wealth, we have never seen kings in the past with such fabulous wealth. And with that wealth comes power. So what is happening is that these, particularly these concentrations of wealth, have made the rules for this type of new economy, and it works in their interests, in their favour. So the accumulation of wealth is trickling up. It's not trickling down, it's trickling up into the hands of the few. For instance, the United States, Joseph Stiglitz was saying in a recent article that the median wages for full-time male workers is less now than it was 40 years ago.
right.
So this is an astonishing statement to make. It just shows you that what is happening in the United States, to our mind, it's unsustainable. We can't imagine how it can continue. But of course, that's happening on a global scale too.
Yeah.
And so we're moving into a type of capitalism which is not only very inequitable, but it's skewing the power of the planet and driving us in this very technocratic way to serve their own interests. So this is the point that a lot of the economists have been making too. And they have been advising the Pope on this encyclical, like Joseph Stiglitz, Jeffrey Sachs, Amartya Sen. A lot of the top economists have been involved in the preparation for this encyclical. So if critics say, oh, the Pope doesn't know any modern economics, nonsense. He's being advised by some of the top economists in the world about this. They've been very careful. They've been preparing this for a number of years. And so it's an extremely critical point, because this touches on a vital nerve in the American special interest and political power groups, which will challenge their power.
Yes.
So if America is prepared to change the way their economy works along the lines of Pope is suggesting, then it will mean a restructuring of power in the United States and economic interests. So,
well, that's likely to come up against a hard wall.
yeah. But he's saying, well, look at the European countries. So there's not just one model of capitalism, as the Americans seem to think that theirs is the only model. You've got countries in Europe that are much more equitable, with sustainable policies, like the Scandinavian countries, like Germany, much more worker participation. The ownership of firms is much more diverse. Even banks are very local in Germany, and they've got to reinvest in their local areas, not internationally. So if you've got the cooperative movements throughout many parts of the world. You've got Mondragon in Spain, fabulous successful cooperative. So there are many other ways of having a free market economy without this extreme inequality. You can have capitalism, but a capitalism with conscience.
With conscience, yeah.
That works for everybody, not just for the rich.
Well, neo-capitalism, can you give a quick definition of what that looks like?
Neoliberalism.
Neoliberalism, sorry.
Neoliberalism,
Yes.
it says if you leave the market to work on its own, it will resolve all your ethical issues. So you just let the market make the rules and everybody fits in with that. So you don't need to consider very much issues of social justice or equity. They will be taken care of in the market.
In the market.
And that's what the Pope's challenging. He says it's not working like that, and it hasn't worked like that for a long time.
Well, that's interesting. It sort of gives meaning to GFC is supposed to stand for the global financial crisis, but I think on that basis it stands for greed finally conquers, because that's how it looks like. It's dog eat dog.
Yes. Yes.
And so that, and this is an important point for him, isn't it? Because whilst he's talking about the environment, it's sort of touchy out here somewhere. But once he starts to challenge this, which is actually, say, for America, the core of their very being, he's ruffled the feathers of some people locally, hasn't he?
Yes.
There's been some editorials which have been anything but flattering.
Yes. So he is really challenging a power structure in a very very deliberate way, and the extraordinary thing about it is he's being listened to, and not just by Catholics, but by the general population, because it makes sense.
They can see it. Yeah. We'll get back to that, Bruce. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony in Diversity, and we're speaking with Fr Bruce Duncan. He's a Redemptorist Priest and a lecturer at the Yarra Theological Union, and we're speaking about the papal encyclical. We just finished it. We were just talking about the sort of the hand grenade, really, that the Pope's rolled under the table with this whole economic stuff. Another quote is that, and this is coming back to the environment, but it implies that unless the economic part is fixed, this won't be. Recent world summits on the environment have not lived up to expectations because, due to lack of political will, they were unable to reach truly meaningful and effective global agreements on the environment. Now, this comes back to just to what extent the economic issues are blocking this. The eco-political issues are blocking that.
Yes. Well, we've seen in Australia, the power of the coal industry and the mining industry in general, the energy industries, to delay and change or should reshape our responses to climate and going solar and going to renewable source of energy. It's really hampered our response very great. It's become a great political issue in this country, and I think it surprised people how strong these industries are. They're coal industry is extremely important for Australia's exports, but as we know, the market has really collapsed. or many parts of the mining industry, and particularly the energy industry. It's changing rapidly, and many companies now and many people in Australia have been urging for a long time, well, we are ideally situated in Australia to have solar and wind power and wave energy power as well. And so, but we haven't really taken advantage of this.
No.
And I can understand why, because the coal has been such an important income earner for Australia, but we haven't really used it, saved the resources very well from that.
No.
And they're a huge pollutant to the environment, so they are a great problem. That we've got to cut down on the use of these polluting fuels and switch to new energy sources. So it's illustrated in Australia the conflict between economic interests and environmental interests.
Yes, that whole energy issue, Father, is complicated, and it ties back into your point about capital, in the sense that there's a whole range of areas where capital wants to invest, and energy is one of them on an international basis, and then water's another one on an international basis, in the prediction that these are going to be, people always going to need them.
Yes.
So it comes to that issue of capital again, and trying to bring the pyramid down to a level of manageable level. Does the Pope address further the need for people to simplify their lives? I know he lives a simple life and he's referred to it. Does he mention any further in the encyclical?
He has quite a bit on this, because he believes everybody has to be involved and everybody can do something.
Yes.
So even though some of the examples he gives are rather trivial, you might think, of use less plastic, use less paper, these sorts of things. But they're not trivial. When you multiply them 1 million times over, if people around the world start to really take these on board, you change the culture. You change the way you relate to your environment. So they look trivial, but he's saying everybody has to be involved and everybody can do something. This is part of his background of Canon Cardine's Young Christian Workers movement, insisting on action must follow your sort of process of reflection and prayer, must lead to action, and everybody can be involved, everybody needs to be involved.
Right.
So to simplify their life, what is appropriate? What can we do more simply? How can we use less resources?
Yes, and of course that's very pointed in Australia, because Australia has the ignominious significance of being the country that has houses which are on the average 10 square metres bigger than America. So that would be one step, wouldn't it?
Yes. And
have a smaller house.
Yes, we're building houses which are generally too large for many people, not for everybody, of course, but for many people. And so, yes, we need a whole new way of looking at housing so that it's energy efficient. And
well, that comes down to the tiny house movement at the moment. Have you seen that, where the young people are building these literally tiny houses?
Yes.
Just to have the space, just enough to live in.
Yes.
And this is the motive. It seems to me that the encyclical, and that's the response to it generally. I think it's an engine, isn't it? It's an engine for change.
Yes. And well, what the Pope is very strong on is saying process is really important. If we get the process right, we'll get the right result. But everybody needs to be involved in the process. Everybody has a right to a voice, to speak, and to be consulted, but also to look to the concerns of the whole group, not just the individuals, but the whole group. Where are we going as a world community now? We have these tremendous opportunities available to us to abolish hunger and poverty in the world. We have that possibility, first time in human history. But on the other hand, if we don't get it right, he's warning it could be very dire for many people. The prospects are quite almost alarming.
Yes, well, when you see what's happened, and this is a different cause, of course, in Europe with the migrations from Syria, etc. Once migrations like that start, they're virtually unstoppable, and migrating over lack of food, lack of water, lack of arable land, That's possible, isn't it? On the
It
same
is.
scale.
And that's why most of us are here in Australia, because our parents or grandparents or wherever, or more recently, have migrated from countries where there has been trouble or hunger, like the Irish famine. Many of us came out, and many of our forebears came out as a result of that famine. So it happens in human history that it's inevitable to happen. But how we manage it with very large numbers of people is very concerning.
It is concerning, and it will take time, and we're out of it for the moment. We'll be back in a moment.
Mani Allah. Alleluia. Mani Allah.
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony in Diversity, and we're speaking with Fr Bruce Duncan. And he's a Redemptorist priest, and he's a lecturer at the Yarra Theological Union. The encyclical, we've talked around it, and we could talk for another couple of years probably. But could we just address this prayer, which was the prayer that Pope Francis concluded with? And I wonder, would you, as a priest, you're a practiced prayer deliverer, would you?
I'll have a go.
Yeah, give it a run.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about this prayer is he wrote another one for Christians to say together. But this is a prayer he's written so that everybody, whatever their belief or non-belief, could say.
Could participate in.
So he starts, High Lord, who are present in the whole universe and in the smallest among your creatures, you who envelop with your tenderness everything that exists, you pour into us the strength of your love so that we can take care of life and beauty. Flood us with peace so that we might live like brothers and sisters without harming anyone. Father of the poor, help us to deliver the abandoned and the forgotten of this earth that means so much to you. Restore our life so that we may protect the world, not so that we may plunder it, so that we seed beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those that only look for advantage at the expense of the poor and of the earth. Teach us to discover the value of everything, to contemplate with wonder, to recognize our being deeply united with all creatures on our path towards your infinite light. Thanks for being with us every day. Please support us in our fight for justice, love and peace.
Thank you. Now that's a summary of the encyclical, isn't it? When you think
It is
about
really, yes.
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 Yes, and he addresses the point, the point which is going to cause the biggest issue, as far as I can see, is the issue of not exploiting. He's tried to address the exploiters. I can see some massive tensions coming forward from that. But you're the man. You've read it. You're a priest. You deal with social issues. What do you think the major impacts will be, and what do you see the seeds growing from this? What do you, just looking into the future a bit, what do you think the outcome could be of the encyclical?
I think Pope Francis is emerging as a figure like Mandela or the Dalai Lama in some ways. He's a voice for humanity, for our moral conscience that we all feel deeply within us. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, look, we're on this journey together, and we need to relate more closely together, to value each other, to value the difference in each other, or the differences, in whatever religion or belief or nationality. God loves everybody the same, everyone without exception. So we have a sense of being part of a human community And so how do we respond to this and to recognise it's not just the human community, the creation itself is groaning, the scriptures say,
Yes.
in anticipation of what the kingdom of God is going to be like, that we hope for. We can't even imagine what it's going to be like, but this is the promise, certainly as Christians, but I think all people have a sense of the earth as a precious gift, as something to be treasured and to be cared for.
Yeah.
So out of this, I hope, a stirring of moral conscience among all people to really put aside some of the political divisions, to talk together. He's very insistent on dialogue and process, he said, and to avoid conflict, but to talk through our differences and to come to try reconciliation, to really resolve them in a positive way, which recognise the humanity of the other, to recognise the other as fully human and loved by God, and sharing a common responsibility for the earth. I think he's interacting with elite groups at the United Nations, with heads of government, with all these international organisations. He's coming in supporting what many other groups have been working at for years. The environmental groups we mentioned before, economic reformers, the social critics, many different levels. He's coming in supporting that and saying, yes, let's bring it all together now and try to make the best of it we possibly can, with a view always to what's happening at the bottom of the heap. How are the poorest feeling? Because how are they faring? Because that will indicate how just our system is. If we're not caring for those at the bottom, then our system is not working properly. We need to keep changing it to make sure everybody benefits.
Yeah, your comparison to Mandela is appropriate, I think, in the sense that, according to media at least, his welcome in America after Cuba is going to be quite rock star, like a lot of enthusiasm amongst particularly young people.
Yes, not just young people, I think. Well, we'll have to wait and see what it is, but I think he is touching a nerve which nobody else has been able to touch quite the same way.
No.
And the fact that he is working very closely with people who are agnostics. One of the people who helped launch the document was an agnostic professor from Germany and climate change specialist. You've got Naomi Klein coming in and having meetings with them. So it's right across the board, not just a Catholic thing, because he's recognising the Orthodox Church was early and uses some of their material. So it's all of us together are in this, and let's move together, recognising that this is a precious moment. Yes,
and a precious moment it is indeed. Father, I'd like to thank you so much for the feedback that you've given us in relation to the encyclical for this program and the programs before. And I anticipate we might talk again after some of these other sessions which will take place in the future. Thanks very much for coming in.
Be very pleased to. Thank you.
You've been watching Harmony and Diversity. We'll be back next week. Bye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om.